Hello, and welcome to the first session of Wacom Career Days, the online event where self-employed artists and studio professionals will share their insights and experiences on how to pursue a professional career as a creative. My name is Onur, and I will be your host today. We have a very exciting session waiting for you, but before we jump into the talk, I will go through some of the basics with you. So our session will last approximately 45 minutes with a dedicated Q&A at the end. And we will keep an eye on the chat, so feel free to send your questions anytime you wish. We are all here to learn from the experience of our speakers, so please be kind to each other and keep the chat clean for session-related questions and commentary during the presentation. This stream will be open until 9 p.m. tonight, and in between our talks, we will have plenty of time to share your art accounts in the chat. In fact, we encourage you to share your art accounts during the break. I will personally check all of them. And if you have to leave early, don't worry. The session is recorded and will be available on Wacom YouTube page in the following days. Those of you who registered will also receive a follow-up email with summary and additional information next week. So a little bit of advertisement from our side. To show our appreciation to all of you who take part in the sessions and take time for it, we have an outstanding offer for you. By using the discount code on the screen at Wacom Europe or UK eStore, you can get 15% discount on our special creative bundles. I will give you a few seconds to scan the QR code, or you can check the video description for the link. This is a limited time offer, so you don't want to miss it. Yes, finally, it's time to start. We have Sam Young with us today. Sam is a Toronto-based digital illustrator and a content creator. He has over 3 million followers across multiple social media platforms and is constantly sharing amazing art, tutorials, and overall inspiration all around. So without further ado, Sam, let's start.
All right. What's up, guys? Hope you guys are doing well. Thank you for joining me, and big thank you to Wacom for hosting this event and inviting me here. I love you guys. I love your products. You guys have served me very, very well over the past 3-4 years with your Cintiq Pro 24. So appreciate you guys and appreciate everyone for being here. So today we're going to be jumping right into the topic of creating a community with your followers. I know in today's day and age, where a lot of us are exposed to social media, a lot of us are posting our work on social media. I want to say like most of the artists that I know personally are sharing their work in one way, form or another on some type of social media platform. So it's very, very prevalent in our lives. And I want to show you guys today some of the ways that might help you guys out in terms of creating a community online and also being able to monetize your work online in the future, to incorporate it into whether it be your professional career or to have it as your main source of income. So without further ado, let's get right into it. I want to begin with kind of a brief intro about myself, just in case you guys are not too familiar with what I do. I mainly do digital illustrations and I share them online on Instagram. That is one of my biggest platforms. And I also make goofy content, as you guys can see, on YouTube. So, there's quite a few different avenues. I also work on Patreon and share my stuff on Twitter and TikTok as well. So I'm kind of spread around everywhere. And I love creating content and creating digital pieces online and working for myself. So I want to talk a bit about how I got to the point where I'm at today, just very briefly. I'm not going to give you a whole backstory, but I initially enrolled in a graphic design program because I thought I was going to be a product designer of some sort. And then throughout my program, I never really found that I was extremely, extremely passionate about what I was doing. So throughout the program, I kind of dabbled a little bit on social media. I started posting my work on social media, but never really gained too much traction. And I think maybe in the third year, the summer of third year, I decided, you know what, I'm going to work harder towards doing this. I'm going to try to improve more. And I started learning from some other artists that I saw online. I started trying to set a schedule for myself, be a little bit more consistent about it. And it started really actually taking off for me. And I think everything kind of also lined up with COVID. Everybody was stuck at home. People were on social media more. So things kind of lined up. And after the account took off, I kind of just transitioned straight into social media after university, which I was very, very fortunate to have been able to do. And then, Instagram was kind of my main platform back then. That was back when Instagram wasn't all about reels. So when you share an image, it could actually get a really good amount of reach. But nowadays, you kind of have to do a little bit of everything. But Instagram, I then transitioned into YouTube and Patreon. I started setting up Patreon pages to try to monetize my work. I probably got into a little bit too early, but then again, it provided some really, really valuable learning experiences for me. YouTube was kind of almost like a happy accident. You know, I just wanted to post process videos, and then one day someone sent me a tablet to review or something, and so I had to show my face, and I was like, you know what, my face is out there now, I might as well keep doing this. So now YouTube is at over 1 million subscribers, which is still crazy to me. And also on Twitter, just because, you know, if you're posting the same piece of artwork, you might as well double dip, which is also something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. So now, with me out of the way, let's talk about building a following. So, in order to create a community from your followers, you need a little bit of followers first. So, that's what we're going to talk about. I want to kind of cover some of the main ways that can help you out in terms of building a following, like the mindset you should have, the practices that you should engage in, and just some things that you should stick with when you're trying to pursue social media career. So let's go. First topic that I want to cover is quality. So the quality of your work should always be your top priority, and this is something that I really firmly believe in. Quality could refer to a wide range of things. So, for example, if you're an illustrator like myself, perhaps the quality of your work means your shape language, your confidence in your fundamentals. It could mean like your understanding of colors, your understanding of line art, a wide range of different things. But you want to make sure that the aspects of your art that really, really make a big difference on the kind of work that you produce, you want to make sure that those aspects are the highest quality possible. So I always encourage people to focus on quality instead of the more minor things, like, for example, when you post something or how you put the hashtags on something, because those things kind of come second. The first and most important thing is quality. And to kind of expand a little bit more on the second point, well, how it could refer to a wide variety of things. It doesn't just to have to apply to art as well. Let's say if you're making YouTube videos, or if you're making reels, then the way you edit your videos, the way you put your videos together, could also be, you know, an aspect of quality in your work. It could also be your storytelling in terms of your reels, or it could be your storytelling in terms of the artwork that you produce. It could be an absolute wide range of different things, but quality is something that you should think about. How does it apply to you and the type of work that you do, and how can you attain more quality? And that might involve learning from other people, which is also something we're going to talk about later on. And the third point is you want to create work that you're truly passionate about. And this is going to help you hold yourself to a higher standard. So if you're doing something that you're kind of like, man, I don't want to be doing this. I have no heart in this. I have no desire to be doing this. Then obviously you're not going to hold yourself to as high of a standard as you should be. So make sure that what you're doing is something you actually want to be doing. And again, this is something that you have to think about on your own time. What is it that you actually want to do? What is it that you find most joy in doing? What kind of art do you want to do? What kind of content do you want to do? And kind of have that dialogue with yourself so you can decide you know, what type of work really, really, really works for you, speaks to you, and what type of work is going to allow you to hold yourself to the highest standard possible. Because that's, again, it's going to go back to the point of quality. You know, if you can produce work where you hold yourself to a high standard, obviously the quality of that is going to be much, much higher than work that you don't really care about. And the final point is, don't get caught up on the numbers. So this is something that I see that's very common with especially younger people who are trying to get into social media, or, you know, get into a career online. People tend to care way, way, way too much about analytics and how the numbers play out on each and every single one of their posts, on their you know, monthly stats and things like that. Like, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but it only matters to a certain degree, right? I like to think of it like working out. You know, if you're going to the gym, it doesn't matter if you're tracking like all of your tiny little details about the carbs that you take in if you're not working out hard enough in the first place. It's like you have to get the fundamental, the foundation down. You have to get the quality there. And as soon as you have the quality in your work, people are going to take notice and the numbers are going to kind of come afterwards. So it's like number one and two. You got to understand the order that the things can kind of come in. So don't focus on the wrong thing. Don't get too caught up on the numbers. They do matter, but not that much. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about in terms of building a following, something that's also going to help people out a lot, is growth. And I'm not talking about growth of your followers. I'm actually talking about the growth of yourself as an artist or as a creator. So, the number one thing that helped me out the most when I was learning and trying to get better is just learning from others and being open to trying new things. I think learning from others is one of the most valuable things that you could possibly do because other people have spent hundreds of thousands of hours trying to figure things out, and some people have figured it out. So you can actually learn a ton by observing the way that they do things and how they conduct themselves, how they draw certain subjects, how they use maybe their colors, how they edit their videos together. A lot of things. There's a ton of great information that you can gather from people by simply observing and trying to learn, and also being open to trying new things. Because it's not going to be very helpful if you just observe and you're like, oh, they're doing this, cool, and then the next day you just move on, you keep doing what you were doing. No, instead try to understand what is it about what they do that you really gravitate towards, and see if you can implement a little bit of that into your own work. For example, I myself, I might really like the character stylization of someone like Ramon, and I might be like, okay, I'm going to try to add this kind of messy line art into my work next time. I'm going to try to do a little bit of this, not necessarily copying one for one, but just trying to add a certain element of something that someone else does really well into your work. So trying new things, right? You got to be open to that, and that's what's also going to help you develop as an artist or as a content creator yourself. In my experience, growing as an artist is one of the key drivers to my growth on social media. And this, I honestly cannot emphasize this enough because I have like my experience with social media is when I first started for the first 2 or 3 years on Instagram, I was not growing too much. I was not developing too much, and the follower count was not really. It was very stagnant. I think I was stuck at maybe 10,000 for the longest time, and I just could not get past that plateau. And the whole time I thought to myself, oh, like I'm perfectly fine. I'm better than all the people that I know in real life. So, there's no need for me to go out there and try to learn from other people. And then one day I saw, I think the work of Ross Draws. I saw some of the art from Ilya Kuchinov, and I was like, oh, there are people out there who are doing crazy things that are much better than what I can do right now. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to drop this whole idea that I know what there is to know, and I decided I'm going to try to learn from them. I'm going to try to implement what they do into my work and just start as almost like a blank slate. And that's when kind of my art started getting a lot better, and that's when my social media also started getting a little bit more attention. So that's very important. Okay, growing as an artist is one of the key drivers to growth on social media, and this also goes back to the point of quality, right? Because if you're growing as an artist, the quality of your work is obviously going to start getting higher. And again, the higher the quality, the more attention you're going to get from other people. And point number three is don't be afraid of a challenge. This is really important because if you just stay in your comfort zone, if you see a reference and you're like, oh, this is too complex, I don't think I can do this, I'm going to move on to the next one, I'm going to draw something simpler. Well, then you never know how you would have tackled that reference. You would have never known how you would have faced that challenge. So in that example, in the example of, let's say you see a really complex reference that maybe has a crazy perspective on a character, and you're like, oh, there's no way I can do this. I don't know how to do this. Well, if you don't try it out, you wouldn't know which aspects of it gives you the most pain. If you were to try it out and you fail miserably and you create an absolute abomination, then hey, like at this point in the drawing, I was really having trouble. Or maybe during the initial sketching phase, that's when I had the most trouble. Then you know, okay, next time for future reference for my learning, maybe I need to brush up on my anatomy. Maybe I need to brush up on my perspective, and that's going to help you kind of isolate and target some of your weaknesses. So don't be afraid of a challenge. You're going to fail. You're going to fail a lot in many different aspects when you face challenges, but they also teach you a lot about yourself and how what type of weaknesses that you have and what are the things that you can work on. Okay, so point number 4 is your growth directly contributes to the quality of your work, which is something that we talked about before. So you always want to keep this growth kind of mindset. You want to keep exploring your own limitations. You want to keep trying to face challenges, because growth obviously contributes to the quality, and quality contributes to growing your following. Um, and next, I want to talk about consistency. This is just so you guys know, these points are all by no means like ranked in what most important to least important. I think they're all very, very important. And consistency is honestly super, super key in terms of building a following on social media. So you want to set schedules for yourself. You want to set schedules in terms of how much you want to practice, how much you want to post, how often do you want to do the things that you are obligated to do. So for me, my schedule right now is just to give you guys an example, like I would post once every 3 days. I used to post once every other day, but that was like insane. That would have burned me out if I kept it going. But I post once every 3 days. So I post and then I have a couple days to, draw, to take time for myself, take time off or whatever. And then 2 days later, I got to post again. So that's kind of my schedule right now. And it works for me because I draw really fast. So with an illustration, I would take maybe 2 hours, around 2 hours for an illustration. And again, like that schedule works because of that kind of time frame that I'm working within. If you take a really long time, maybe set a schedule that is a little bit more realistic to you, maybe once a week or once every 2 weeks. Anything works as long as it's something that you can maintain. And that leads us into our second point. So you want to have a schedule that you're able to maintain for a long period of time. Okay, so you want to think of this as something that is going to be a part of your life for a long time. So you don't want it to be just absolutely stressful and chaotic for you, because then you're going to burn yourself out very, very fast. And that's something that we definitely want to avoid, because the moment you do that, you're going to run into crazy art block. You're going to have a hard time motivating yourself to do any learning, to do any challenging of your own skill set. So we want to avoid that. So be realistic with yourself. Think to yourself, how much time do I have in my life to dedicate to this, and how much time is reasonable for me to also maintain good mental health while doing this, right? So set a schedule that you can maintain. It could be honestly anything that works for you, right? There's no one size fits all that's like guaranteed you're going to succeed with this schedule. Like there's no such thing as that. You find something that works for you. Like I know artists like Rob, he doesn't even seem like he has a schedule. So some people kind of just post whenever. But I find in terms of keeping consistent, it's helpful to have that schedule so that you can kind of hold yourself accountable at times. And point number 3 is you want to be persistent. So we're talking about consistency, but you also want to have persistency. So this means that even if you mess up your schedule, you don't let it be an excuse for you to just give up. And I think this is like way too common. I see this way too often, not even just in artists. I see it in my friends and some of the other pursuits that they try to do in daily life. I see this way too often in other people, where whenever someone messes up like a schedule that they set for themselves, they're just like, oh, whatever, I'm just not going to do this anymore, and they let it be an excuse to stop entirely. But you don't want to have that mindset. Okay, so this is really important, especially if you're working on social media, because so many times you're gonna mess up, and there are going to be a lot of times where you're going to be like, oh, maybe I should just stop doing this. Maybe I should just leave this thing alone and just try something else. But the key is to be persistent. So even when something goes wrong, when life just beats you down, make sure that you keep getting back up and keep trying again. Um, don't give up, right? Even if you mess up a consistent schedule that you've kept for a good amount of time and you just absolutely fall into a bad spiral, you start sleeping at 4 a.m. and you wake up at 1 p.m. Well, don't give up. Try to correct that and get back at it, right? And some other helpful tips, and I've saved these for last because I really don't think these are as important as kind of the mindset and ideology kind of tips that I gave before. But these are just some of the more, I guess, tangible things that you can do to try to get your work to more people. So number one is join art trends or challenges or events. So some of the really good ones out there are like draw this in your style challenges that are hosted by bigger artists, or maybe challenges that are hosted by companies like giveaways and things like that. You could join those things and put your work into certain hashtags and get more people to see your work, right? The people who are also joining those trends or those events, they might be interested in that hashtag, so they might check out the hashtag, and then they'll more people are going to probably see your work. In my experience, when I hosted the Draw This in Your Style challenge for celebrating 1 million on YouTube for me, a lot of people joined, and I did check out a lot of people's profiles, and it seemed to me like the posts that they made for that Draw This in Your Style challenge tends to get a little bit more engagement than their usual post. And again, that's just because a lot of people are visiting that hashtag who are also very interested in that specific topic, that specific type of art. So you might get a lot of reach through something like that. So if you find that you're having a hard time getting reach, maybe try to get your work out there through some of these methods. Point number two is you want to share your work on multiple platforms. So in my experience, like I think it's kind of wasteful to just draw one thing for Instagram and just not put it anywhere else, right? We have Twitter. Granted, Twitter can be a very crazy space. Sometimes it could be quite toxic, but it's there. It's there for you. It's there for you to reach more people. So you can use it to your advantage. If you have a piece that you're proud of, and like the points we were saying before, if you truly have good quality of your work and you're growing and you're passionate, there's no reason you should shy away from posting your work, the same piece of work, twice on two different platforms. Let people see it twice. Double dip your work. You put so much effort into it. Let people see it twice. Don't just put it on one single platform. And also, in my experience, I think a lot of people, I get comments from people saying that, oh, I wish you posted this notification on Twitter or whatever, because I don't use Instagram at all. So I didn't see it in time to be able to join your art challenge. And it's like, yeah, like there are quite a few people who only use one platform versus the other. So you might actually be reaching a lot of new people as well. Point number three is that you want to use relevant hashtags. I think I've talked about this like quite a bit before, but if you're using hashtags to try to get your work to reach more people, don't just use random ones, right? You want to use ones that are somewhat related to your art, because if you, let's say if you post a digital piece and you hashtag it traditional art, then people who are exploring that hashtag are just going to be annoyed with you, because they're going to be like, why are you posting this here, right? It's not really going to get the effect that you want it to have. So use relevant hashtags. Don't be annoying. And number four is post when most of your following is online. This is kind of a no-brainer. You want to, if you're doing Instagram, there's business tools for Instagram business account where you can see that kind of the activity of your following during different times of the day, and you can kind of base your post times off of that. I kind of do that. For me, most of my following is online at 12 p.m. for me, Toronto time, and so I always try to post around that time. And I don't know if it actually has a crazy great effect or not, but it might be placebo at this point. But that's just what I do. I've posted it like at weird times before too. I've posted at like 2 p.m., 3 p.m., and the posts seem to also do okay. So I don't know if it's just like a placebo, but that's something that I always try to do. And point number five, again, this is something we talked about before. This is super important, is you want to emulate the artists who are where you want to be. So it's kind of similar to like learning from others and trying to implement the things that they do and trying some new things for yourself. This means that, if you see someone, and I did this a lot when I was first starting out. So when you see somebody who's in the place that you want to be, well, then it's probably a good idea to look at their career trajectory, look at what they did, look at the things they're doing right now, and try to emulate that. You want to try to kind of trace their steps and see if you can also kind of accomplish the same things that they're accomplishing right now. Okay, so now onto the kind of the second section of this presentation. Hope I'm doing good on time. So you have a following now. Uh, you have a really big following, and what do you do now? Like, what do you have to do to keep this going, keep the momentum going? How do you then kind of turn this into something that you can actually make a living from, or just have it as a side kind of hustle that you have, next to your main job? So the most key thing here is consistency, right? So people follow you to see your content, so you have to give them more of your content. It doesn't mean that your content has to stay stagnant or exactly the same. It just means that you should give them more of you, authentically yourself, the things that got them there in the first place. And you want to be consistent in this process. So, if someone, I have personal experience with this too. If someone follows you, let's say they follow you today and they're like, oh, I would love to see more of this person's work. And then you don't post for like 4 months. And then, you might all of a sudden you're like, hey guys, I'm back. You post something else. And that person who followed you 4 months ago might be like, wait, who is this? Why am who? I followed this account. I don't even remember this. And then they might just go and unfollow you, right? So you want to be consistent to stay kind of in people's subconscious minds. You want to be there. And people usually, when they follow you, they want to see more of your content. So, honestly, it's really, really important to keep putting your work out there. But make sure that the schedule is manageable, right? Make sure that whatever you're doing, depending on, if you take 10 hours per piece, maybe it's more reasonable for you to do one post a week. If you take even longer than that, maybe you can take even longer, but just make sure that you're always there on your account. You're there, you're interacting with people, making sure people know that you're still active and you care. Because if someone's following you and they feel like you don't care about your account, you don't care to maintain your account, then why should they care to keep following that account, even while you don't really care about it anymore, right? So number three is you want to maintain a growing following. This is an important part because obviously you want to make sure that the number keeps going up. It doesn't have to be going like breakneck speed, just rocket exponentially up. If it is, that's great for you. You're going to be the next star, but it could be trickling up as well, as long as it's going upwards. You want it to be trending upwards. But if it's stagnant, so it's kind of staying the same, it's not really growing at all. You don't, you do a little mental math in your head, and you're like, over the next year, I might get like 100 followers. Then that's pretty stagnant. Or if it's shrinking, right? If it's actually going down, people are unfollowing more than they are following you, then maybe it's time to try something new. So kind of goes back to our first point about not being afraid to try new things. You want to be open to trying new things. You want to be, if something's actually just not working, if let's say you keep posting single image posts and they're just not reaching people, maybe it's time to try Reels. Maybe it's time to go to the dark side and try TikTok or something, right? And if it's or you can try something else. Maybe you could try doing carousel stories, or just something a little bit different, something that might reach more people. But the underlying point is you don't want to stop entirely. You don't want to give up. Keep trying new things, but don't give up, even if your account is stagnant or if it's shrinking. So that's tip number one, consistency. Number two is you want to interact with people who support you. I know a lot of people out there say that you should just post something and just leave it. Don't interact with people on social media. It's gonna be bad for your mental health. But hey, if you're authentic and you're approachable and you're just truly yourself, and you don't try to be somebody you're not, you don't try to pretend to be someone you're not, then you can build a great relationship with your followers. I think, at least that's from my experience. I have a really, really great community around me, and my followers know me, and they know the kind of content that I do. They know my personality. So I think it's really really easy for me to be around my followers, to interact with my followers. I don't feel like stressed at all. I don't feel like I'm gonna run into haters or anything like that. Um, so be authentic, build a good relationship, and some of the ways that I find personally that are really, really helpful in terms of doing that is through comments, the comments under your posts. You're going to get a lot of very kind people in the comments in your post saying, wow, this looks amazing. They'll try to encourage you and stuff. So you should show your appreciation for them, show that you are there, you're interacting with them, and you care about them, you value them being there. You can also do stories, polls, Q&As, etc. Excuse me. In terms of Q&As on stories, I find that actually gets a lot of traction. Now, obviously, you don't want to be doing that all the time. But if you do want people to get to know you a little bit better, you can do an Instagram story Q&A. Just do one of those text boxes and say like, ask me anything or whatever. And then people might give you questions. And when you answer those questions, just look at the view count on your stories. Those tend to do really, really well. Number 4 is try not to internalize rude comments, because the more people you reach, the more you're also going to reach some pretty sad people. So people are going to probably give very rude comments. They're going to try to maybe put words into your mouth, maybe be rude about things for no reason at all when you just haven't given them a reason. And people are going to do that. But one of the ways that I find is really helpful for me to kind of deal with stuff like that is just to understand why they might be doing it. I think a lot of people out there are just, they might not be as happy in their own lives. They might not be in a place that's as good as you are. So they want to kind of project their negativity onto you. So it's really nothing, when that does happen, you have to understand that it's not anything about you. It says a lot more about them than it does about you. So that's a way to kind of do a little mental gymnastics to understand, hey, like it's not on me, it's on the other person. If they want to be mean to a fellow human being, that's entirely on them, right? So try not to internalize any rude comments that you might receive online. But I also do want to add to this point, because there's comments, like critical comments can there's like a fine line between genuinely helpful constructive criticism and criticism just for the sake of kind of tearing you down. So you have to be able to discern between the two. If someone's actually looking out for you and genuinely trying to give you helpful crit, then you should appreciate that. But if someone's actually trying to tear you down, hey, like, try not to internalize that. Don't care about that. Don't worry about that. Okay, that's on that person. So and it's important to know what your followers are thinking and what they like, and that's going to lead us into our next point, which is listening to your followers. Okay, so you want to take notes from them. What content do they react to the most, and what seems to get less attention from your followers? This means when you post something, like check this post against your previous, let's say 6, 7, maybe 10 posts, and see how it's doing compared to the post that you've posted previously. And maybe you can check a certain number of posts and see which one got the most engagement, which one got the least engagement, which one got the most likes, which one's got the most comments. And if you're doing YouTube videos, YouTube has great analytics for that. So YouTube automatically ranks your last 10 videos in terms of which one got the most views, which one's got the least views. And you can kind of use that information to ask yourself, okay, why do I think that this one got way more attention than this one that didn't do as well? And it might be, in the case of YouTube, it might be I just did a really bad thumbnail and a really bad title, and things don't really work together in terms of the thumbnail and the title, so people don't really want to click on this video, right? So there's a lot of things that you can learn from that. So listen to your followers and see what are the things that they're reacting to and what they're not reacting to, and you can take that lesson going forward so that you can try to make more content that they engage with a little bit more. And you want to try to look at other people's work as well, which means the people who are doing the things that you want to be doing, people who are working on social media, like look at what does well for them and what doesn't do well for them. You could do the same for me, right? Look at what videos I put out that does really well and which ones that don't do really well, and try to ask yourself why did this one do worse than the other one? And you might come up with a few reasons, and that's basically the process of learning from someone else's mistakes. Instead of going out there and making all of those mistakes yourself, it really makes the process a little bit more efficient for you. And the final point is to just not let this lock you into a box. You should use it as a guide and not a rule. You should always make time to create what you're most passionate about. So I've talked to a lot of creators, about this. There's always a fine balance between making what you want to make versus making what your audience wants to see. You want to strike a balance there. You don't want to just do what your audience wants to see, and you also don't want to just do exclusively what you want to do. Ideally, the thing that you want to do most is also the thing that your audience wants to see most, but that doesn't always happen. So you have to be ready for that to be able to kind of walk that tightrope. And then the last thing here is you want to create products and bring value to your audience, right? And to be able to monetize your work. So you want to, by making products that bring value to both your audience and yourself, you're basically pushing yourself further along in terms of helping, in terms of making this a career for yourself or making it a side job for yourself. So you want to make products. For example, for me, I do prints, I make tutorials on Patreon, and I do videos on YouTube that probably, hopefully, bring entertainment value to people. And those are some of the avenues where I get paid. And if you're an artist and you're just starting out, I want you to understand that it's okay to monetize your work, right? We all need to make a living. Artists need to make a living just as an engineer needs to make a living, right? It's a viable career path, and we should all be allowed to make a living. So don't feel that kind of that guilt. I know a lot of artists feel some kind of guilt when it comes to charging money for art, and you shouldn't feel that guilt, because if it is really a way for you to make your living, then you're just doing what you have to do, and it's totally it should be completely understandable to people who value art and the work of artists. Make sure to do this consistently and one step at a time, not too much, not too little. So you want to walk kind of a middle path when it comes to monetization. You want to do it one thing at a time. For me, I started off with doing prints. So I was doing prints for a very, very long time. And then I ventured into Patreon, but I didn't have like all the tiers set up. I just had a very low tier initially on Patreon, and then kind of started building out more and more tiers. And then I started going into YouTube a little bit more, and then getting more into sponsorships on YouTube. So one thing at a time. Don't try to do too much at once, and also don't try to do too little at once. Now, if you don't do enough, well, you're going to be working for free or working at a deficit for a long time, which is not good, right? You want to be able to make a living or help use it to supplement your life in some way. But if you're doing it too much, your audience might also be like, "Oh, this guy's just selling out." Like everything that comes out of this guy's mouth now is about selling something, and I don't really feel a connection to this person anymore, right? That might also be a really negative downside to trying to monetize too much all at once. And out of every 1,000 followers, in my experience, there will be probably one who will buy a print or join your Patreon, and those are going to be your top supporters. So, like I said before, you want to make sure that you make time to interact with them. For me, I run a Discord server with my patrons on Patreon, so we often chat in there, and I host exclusive kind of events where they can submit their work for YouTube videos. So that's kind of a way to just show appreciation to people who have shown their appreciation to me. And my personal experience is stories, direct messages, comments, great places to interact with your followers. And I think YouTube takes that interaction to the next level because it lets people see my face. It lets people hear the way I talk, and it gets people more of a read on my personality. So for the people who do want to connect with me a bit more because they really enjoy my work, well, that's a place that allows them to do that. And I think that takes that kind of connection between you and your community to just a whole different level. Like people have like long running jokes about me and like memes about my content, and it's great. I find that to be really, really wholesome and amazing. But yeah, there are many different types and levels to communities, and I want to share that with you guys because there's no one size fits all for any of this. So some different approaches include, for example, Aaron Blaze. He teaches through online courses. YouTube videos, and he very, very loosely interacts with his followers. Honestly, not too often, but most of the community, the sense of community, the interaction there is coming from just looking at, the way Aaron teaches, the way he talks in his videos. So people feel a really close connection with him because they see the person that's behind the work, right? And Ramon Nunez, for example, he posts on Instagram very regularly. He comments on my posts all the time. He comments on other people's posts all the time, and he reacts to comments. He reacts to messages. And he also does a lot of direct interaction on Patreon. So there's a ton of involvement there, directly from the artist to the audience that they have, which is a very different approach from Aaron. So there's like an approach of less direct mingling and approach of more direct mingling. Um, and then there's the example of me, right? Like I teach through Patreon, I send messages through our Discord server. So those are some of the ways to connect. And I also do YouTube videos so that people can see me interact and talk and react to certain things. So that kind of builds a sense of connection between the viewers and myself. And also, stories and comments, but no DMs because it gets a little bit too hectic. It's way too much. And the other, like almost polar opposite example is Bulap, who posts on Instagram, has a very loyal following for his webtoon series, and people who admire his work. There's like a really loyal following of people who admire just the way he paints. But yeah, if you manage to get a reply from him, you basically won the lottery because this guy's like a ninja. He doesn't really show himself at all. So that's a different way to build a community, right? Like, and I just want to show you guys these examples because I want to let you guys know that you can kind of really approach it from your own unique way, right? There's no one size fits all for this. Just depends on what you're most comfortable with. You can be like Lup, or you can be like Ramon, or you can be like myself, right? Yeah, so that's the point that I just talked about. No one size fits all. Everyone's got a different approach. Try to look at some other artists and see how they've done it, and see if there's something good that you can take and implement into the way that you're doing it. And yeah, try to experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't be afraid to face a challenge. And some of the final thoughts that I have are: working on social media is very flexible. You can use it as your main career or have it as a supplement to your professional career. So it is really, it can be whatever you want to make it. And I want you guys to understand that you don't have to like commit 100% of your time to this. You can have it as a thing that you have on the side, and that's perfectly fine. And also remember that it's going to be difficult, but if it's something that you really want, just be persistent. And you can try to be as consistent as possible, but there are going to be times where you falter. Just be persistent, get back up and try again. And remember, quality first, the numbers come after. Okay, that's the order that it always is in. The quality always comes first, the quality of your content, the quality of your drawings, and then the numbers are going to come after. People will take notice when you have good quality of content. So that will sum up my presentation. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you all.
Perfect, Sam. Thank you so much. That was really inspiring and eye-opening in many ways. And I just couldn't help but think that even though you probably don't know every single one of your millions of followers, you also maintain this respect as if you are interacting with each one of them on a personal level, on your communication and the way you approach, which is definitely inspiring. So I'm taking a look at the questions in the chat, and we have a couple of things. But before we go into questions, I have some on my notes here. You mentioned you talked about quality as being the top priority for young artists. So how do you know when a work is done, and how do you prevent yourself to go down the rabbit hole of perpetual correction?
Yes, that's a great question. That's a really, really good question. Um, I, I think it's hard to know when a piece of work is done, but um, a way to kind of remind yourself is that you don't have all the time in the world, so you want to make sure that every piece is it doesn't like eat into your plans for the future. So if you want to you want to maybe set like a certain amount of time that you want to spend on a certain piece, right? If you know that you have a tendency to go way over and start working on details, because after a certain point, the tiny edits and renders that you make just don't really make that big of a difference anymore. So if you know you have a tendency to do that, maybe take the usual amount of time that you spend on a painting and maybe just set a hard deadline for yourself so that you know, okay, I got to complete this piece within 7 hours. Otherwise, if I don't, like, I'm going to just move on to the next one. So that's a really great way to do it. But yeah, it's hard to know when exactly a piece is done. I'd advise against, the moment you find yourself getting like too caught up on small details, I would advise against just, giving into that and just rendering it over and over and over again. Just You'll probably get a more fruitful kind of learning experience if you do just take the lessons from that one that you're not happy with and just move on to the next one. And that piece doesn't have to go online.
Yep, indeed, I think it's also somewhat related to what you mentioned. Like growth as an artist also comes with an understanding of when something is done, when done is done, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it might not be
Um,
done. You just have to move on.
exactly. So you talked about like not really obsessing over numbers or negative comments. When you're thinking about your earlier days growing your audience in social media, did you have any specific tactics when you noticed that you yourself are in this kind of in a mental state that you realize that you are starting to get affected by it? Did you, I don't know, uh, were you just going out for a walk or banning yourself from social media for a day or two?
Yeah. It did affect me a lot too. Like I know when I was starting out, there were times where I was like, okay, what's the next thing that I can make that will get a lot of likes, right? Like there's always that part of you that's thinking that. But the idea that I got, in terms of kind of bringing myself back is just take a step back, right, and remind myself of what I want to do, like what do I want to do, right? Uh, Take a step back and think, okay, am I doing this just for the likes, or am I doing something that I actually want to do right now? And sometimes it could be like, okay, I want to do a portrait like this for the likes, but then I might be thinking, oh, but I want to try this thing. I want to try drawing this environment next. So you kind of have to do a balancing act of reminding yourself, hey, what do you want to do? And just kind of take it back from thinking about all the numbers. And yeah, if you find yourself doing that, like take a break from looking at your analytics. Just
Mhm.
just take a break.
Yeah, I think it's a great advice for anything that is affecting us negatively in life. You talked about the importance of listening to your followers, and you are very active in keeping track of the comments on your social media posts. Like, of all the random comments, is there something, anything that stayed with you, whether it was the most insightful, surprisingly insightful, or flat out weirdest?
Oh man, all the comments. um I get so many weird comments from people. Like I get tons of weird comments, but I think it's just, my community is pretty funny. They're pretty funny people, so I get like tons of weird, funny comments, which I don't mind at all. Um, the ones that stick with me the most are the ones on YouTube, I think, or on Patreon, who or through Discord, who just, people telling me that uh seeing my work, and then they saw my work and they were inspired to pick up a pen and draw again after like however many years off. And I think that's like the most inspiring thing for me. That's like a thing that just keeps me going. That's like, wow, like I could, if I could have that effect on someone and get them to find their passion for art again, that's like, that makes everything extremely meaningful for me.
Indeed. Okay, a couple of questions from the audience before we wrap up. So, Leia G, oh no, yes, yes, Leia G asked, who are some of the artists that inspire you in your work?
Uh currently currently I want to say, currently I'm kind of observing the work of Studio Ghibli, like Miyazaki, and
Mhm.
the kind of anime style. Like I'm really uh kind of studying the simplicity of it. I really admire the simplicity in anime styles. Also, like Ramon, I'm a big fan of Ramon's work. If you guys don't know Ramon, I don't know his Instagram handle, but his name is Ramon Nunez, and he does a lot of very expressive. Actually, he I might have a I don't like I might have a yeah Ramon Nunez. He does very expressive line art, very expressive and stylized characters. He's also one of my inspirations right now. Um, and I don't know. I try to focus on a couple at a time usually. And they kind of jump from person to person. I think a while back I was looking at the work of Ilya Kushinov, and I think maybe a little bit earlier I was also looking at the work of Lop. So I try to focus on one at a time and see what I can learn from them.
Great. Tips about for beginners. We talked about consistency. So consistency is definitely a question that popped up in the chat a lot when you have a main job going on, or when you have a lot of things happening in your life, how to create that consistency, and also what is the right starting point when it comes to monetization, something that is beginner friendly way to start making money from your art.
Right. Yeah. I'll start with the consistency question. You just have to like you have a main job, or you have, let's say you're in school. You have to give yourself kind of no excuses when it comes to doing what you're doing. Make sure the schedule is manageable, but because you've made it manageable, you don't have an excuse to not be consistent with it. Like for me, when I first started, I was in school full time. I was in university full time, so I was juggling all of my work, all of my university work, assignments, and everything, along with drawing and posting every other day. So, and I like right now, I'm looking back, I'm like, I don't know how I did that, but it's mainly the mindset of just no excuses. Like if you've set out a schedule that you can maintain realistically, then you don't have an excuse not to be able to maintain it. So you want to find time in your day. If it's for practice, find time in your day after you come home from work, or after you're done your assignments. Find a block of time. Maybe instead of spending that hour on video games or on relaxing and going on your phone on TikTok, you can spend that hour doing the thing that that will actually make a big difference in your life in the future. What's the second question?
The beginner-friendly ways to start monetizing your art.
Yes, monetizing. The easiest way, one of the easiest ways is to do prints, to sell prints of your work. Something else is commissions. Like especially if you're starting out, you're a beginner. Commission work and prints are two of the really really good ways to start monetizing. And if you don't want to make your own prints, there's this great service called Imprint. I'm on Imprint right now. And I love talking about Imprint because they give 50% cut to the artists, and they're just honestly a fantastic platform. Really, really great quality prints. So if you're a beginner and you want to sell some prints, but you don't have a printer, you don't have the ink, you don't have the money for the supplies, that's a really great way to do it. And then after that, I guess you can venture into more complex things like YouTube and Patreon. But you have to remember that with YouTube and Patreon, it's a lot more work. It's a lot more commitment. So make sure that you are ready for it, or make sure that you're mentally prepared for the amount of work that it's going to be.
Great. Maybe one last question, and that is from Saidi. Maybe I'm butchering the name, I apologize. Do you advise starting out the drawings from details or add details in the end? A very tactical question.
Tactical, yeah. Never start with the details unless you're a master like Kim Jong-gi. Never start with the details. I have like all my processes is just you start with the big ideas, big shapes, kind of lay down the foundation. At least this is what I do. Okay, unless your brain works very very differently than most people, then maybe you can start from details. But for most people, it's best to lay down the big shapes. So remember, you want to work from big down to small. Okay, always work from big down to small, whether it be your sketch or your color blocking, your background, whatever. Work from big down to small. Never start with the details, because you get, when you work on details too early on, you get too caught up in that tiny spot, and then you kind of lose sight of the big picture. And during the early stages is when you're trying to set up the big picture.
Mhm. Great. Okay, one last question before we wrap up. I will combine a couple of questions into one question. So right now, the social media platforms, especially we talked about Instagram, changes the algorithm, which constantly has an effect on creators who are sharing their content in terms of, you said quality versus quantity. It can definitely get affected, or like how the shift to reels moving into. How do you deal with these changes on algorithm? Like, do you start to receive an email from these platforms once you have 1 million followers that gives you a heads up on algorithm changes,
No,
or is it something you have to figure out yourself?
no, we get no insights into the algorithm changes on the platforms, but you can notice for sure. Like I've talked to other artists who are, I've talked to other artists who are very big on Instagram, and they've told me the same thing. We've all gone through the same thing. Ever since they started pushing for reels, normal posts have been getting less reach and less engagement. And even reels are not getting like crazy engagement, but sometimes a couple of them might pop off out of like maybe 10, right? And sometimes, in my experience though, my normal posts, like some of them still do really well, and the reels too, like my posts and reels, they all seem to do really well. But I definitely noticed like a trend of less reach in terms of the content that you make. So, when you run into stuff like this, when they change the algorithm to favor a new type of thing, you just have to kind of adapt. Even though it might not be great, it's not a great change for artists who draw images. It's not great, but you kind of have to adapt. You kind of have to just see, okay, what's the next thing that I can try to see if I can bump this engagement up a bit. But yeah, like if any of you guys have been around before that kind of reels push, then you probably also noticed a drop in overall reach, and I think that's normal for most artists.
Mhm. Okay, I think we have addressed pretty much all of the questions from the chat, also the questions I had here. And yeah, we can wrap it up. So Sam, thank you so much. This was amazing, really insightful. It was a delight, and thank you for the answers to questions from the community. Well, hope to see you again soon.
Thank you guys very much for being here, and thank you, Wacom, for having me here. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. Before we go, a big thank you to all who joined us today. And please go ahead and follow Sam if you haven't already. And don't forget to check out the special offer we have for you on our Europe and UK e-store. Once again, you can find the link for more information in the video description. And see you again in a bit at 8 p.m. European time when we have our next talk with Vichar Potsma, where he will talk us through his personal career journey and talk about his insights in being a freelancer. And until then, thank you all again and see you in a bit.